Hi, I'm Zandile Mkhwanazi, and I'm one of the co-founders and CEO of Girl Code.
And I'm Denise Trinipin, Technology Portfolio Executive at Bet Software.
Welcome to Technically Speaking, a Girl Code podcast in partnership with Bet Software, where we will be talking to and about amazing women across the globe that are changing the tech landscape. And we hope that you will be educated, motivated, and inspired to take up space in the tech world. I'd like to know a bit about your journey, how it started, who are the people that invested in you to get you to this point in life?
Yeah, that's quite a long journey there with that one. So really, how much of time do we have, Zindile?
We've got time.
Yeah, my journey started way back 25 years ago. And, I went through university, did a degree focused on computer science and in IT. And really, it was promised this view and this vision of what work and your career could look like as a developer. Entered the working industry in an IT company, of course, but working as a quality assurer. And I think for me, what really sort of stuck out was the concept that there's more to just code than creating code. It's actually just as fun and creative as when you actually break code, right?
Okay.
And so that is kind of where my journey really started. If I look back to that point, I had a very open and transparent manager at the time. He was actually someone who had a really good eye for potential. And that's kind of where it started again, just getting the opportunity to go in and build skills, build teams. Now, if we're looking at the technology industry 25 years ago, comparative to in South Africa, comparative to America and Europe, things like security and performance were unheard of. It was certainly not anything that South Africa had actually charted before. Mm-hmm. But the exposure that was actually available and the skill development that was available in the US and Europe was certainly a lot more mature. So the investment really came via that manager saying, how do we build you, Denise, to have that knowledge, have the capability of being able to actually come back, build us teams. And really, these people at this point in time have actually, for a while now, been the forefront of these technical teams within the industry. So I think if we look back at the investment, the journey, it really has been an exciting, a very, very challenging one, of course, because also 25 years ago, the women in technology were by far in the minority, right? I was literally the first technical woman in the company at that time. So there was a lot riding on one's shoulders to make sure that the opportunity that was actually given was one that turned out to be a success. And again, sort of just leading the forefront for that.
I mean, I totally can relate, right? And just in terms of people investing in you, when I started, which is not that long ago, so 25 years ago, about 10 years ago, when I started working for a tech company. So similar, my manager at the time, who also happened to be the managing director of the company, saw potential in me and thought that this is someone that I could potentially mold and expose to different opportunities. So he'd take me with him to a lot of events that he was invited to. These were rooms full of CEOs, CTOs, yes men, but still I was, given the opportunity as an intern, to be among such people and to learn from them. So I think there's certainly a lot of ways that people can invest in you. And I think on that, my second example is a woman, because, we are talking about women in the tech industry. And I've had an amazing, who happens to be the wife, by the way, of my manager. Okay. She also, kind of saw potential in me and thought, look, I want to mentor you. I want to sponsor you, which is something that a lot of people that don't talk about. So sponsorship is essentially her talking about me in rooms that I otherwise wouldn't be in, right? And saying, hey, you need someone that can do this. This is your girl. This is the person that you go to. And for me, that's also what investing in women looks like, right? So I think maybe just segueing from that, let's like touch a bit on what do you think like investing in women successfully could look like? Is it financial investment? Is it mentorship? Is it sponsorship? Is it a combination of those? How do we make sure that in any environment that women step into, they have all those resources to be able to thrive and accelerate their career progression?
Absolutely. I think it's all three of that and maybe a little bit more. I'd love to add support into that. And I'll talk a little bit about it later. But financial and sponsorship and mentorship are absolutely critical for the development. Again, if I look back at my journey, the opportunities that were provided, investment in terms of training, and not just training and development locally in South Africa, overseas, right? It's paying for something in dollars and euros is not nothing. So there was a huge investment that actually really, from a monetary value, that actually really came out from that point. If I look at the concept of coaching and mentorship, you see that's the other thing, because there's often mentorship that you would be able to get from within your environment.
Yeah.
So whether they are peers who have just been in the business for a little bit longer, whether it is actually seniors or executives sitting above you looking to share knowledge, but also then supporting your growth. There's all of those sort of pieces. I mentioned coaching because coaching is often something that an external person can do for you. So part of my journey included coaching from an external source. But again, covered by, at that stage, my company that I worked with, right? And what that really helped to uncover for me was it helped me first to understand who is Denise. What does the vision for myself look like? Where is it that I see myself in 15, 20, 25 years? What is this ultimate goal? What is this ultimate job that I see myself being able to do? But also understanding whether it is from a purpose of impact or whether it's just purely monetary driven. And I think for me, that really made a huge difference in terms of actually understanding for myself where I would go and what would be my next step. And leading into that, or coming out from the coaching, was really understanding my next job and what is it that I need to do to achieve it.
To get to there. I think just to touch on the coaching, Denise, like a lot of people, right, and myself included, think like coaching is for like executive people, like people that are, really at the top of the business. I don't know, as graduates, we're not really encouraged to either go and find a coach or even ask within the business whether coaching is something that's available. Is that something that you've seen? Did you get coaching at the very beginning of your career, or like once you'd hit a certain level? I don't know. What are your thoughts on that?
So I'm not going to say that it's because you've hit a certain level.
Okay.
What I would prefer to say is it really depends on how you have, as an individual, proven yourself. Again, if people see the potential or see an opportunity to open up the concept or the potential for coaching, it's important that the person then steps up to actually make it work, right?
Yes.
And I mean, if I look at where I am right now at Bed Software, I'd like to say that everyone from our graduate level see me as approachable enough to come to me and ask for advice. I hear that very often, where it's not just advice, but Denise, this is actually what I'm keen on. This is what I'm interested in. How could you help me get there? So it is really something that I believe is available and can be available and can be tapped into. But again, it really depends on the individuals. and the opportunity to obviously step into that.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. I think as much as we might want to invest in women, women also must step up to the plate, right? You must rise up to the
Yes.
challenge. And I think that's the thing. Like, there's so many opportunities out there, and it's really up to you as an individual to take up the opportunities. No one can force you, right? And part of that is having support, right? You touched on support when
Yes.
you begin, and I also want us to circle back to that because, for example, for me, in my career journey, I've had a lot of people support me. And that support just looked like conversations, like, let's meet up for coffee. What is your plan? What's happening? Where are your challenges? And how can I, as someone who's been there, support you? And I think we also underestimate how much that can accelerate your progress, especially your career, right? Just asking, like you're saying, people find you approachable, just asking you, can I have coffee with you? This is what I'm thinking about. This is what I need to, I think I need to do to get promoted and whatnot. And just knowing that you have that support and, you can get that advice goes a long way when you're looking at investing, right? It's not just financial, like you said. So maybe like touching on like what your support or what you think support looks like in terms of women specifically.
Yeah. Support, again, I believe is, can come in various forms. You mentioned a few now, which is providing the necessary support, whether it's just a coffee chat, just a conversation around, where are you going? What is it that you need to be doing? But I really, when I say support, what I really am leaning towards is things like the inclusion and procedures and policies that actually almost sort of support the development of women, right? Again, I don't believe that it's just enough for us to do that from a company perspective, just provide support all the time. But the reality is that if we look at women these days, right? 25 years ago, I was not a mom. I am now. And I'm a working mom, right? A working mom that has to go home and see to the family at the end of the day. And I'm certain that I'm not the only one. Then there's also single moms. Who also have a view, who also have a vision and a dream for themselves in terms of what they want to be able to achieve. And so when I say support really looks like for those single moms, single working moms, for the working moms, for the women who actually need that level of flexibility to be able to make sure that they give off their best in the office as well as at home and still feel good enough. That is something that companies we need to be doing. That's what support looks like. And again, it doesn't have to be one way. There's so many. I mean, again, let's look at it. Right, we are individuals. Each individual has their own personality. They have their own circumstances that they're dealing with, and so often it means that we need to bring empathy into that. Empathy within the business constraints, but clearly then understanding that at an individual level, support comes in those various sort of forms.
Yeah, I like that because I think it also talks to something I believe in, which is people first, right? Yes, it's a company and there's profits and all,
Yeah.
but you need to think about the person first. There's many circumstances, and we've talked about this, like being a mom, right? The school, you have to go fetch your kid, and we're not saying fathers, because I know there'll be like people
Yes.
like, oh, what about
Dads
the
do.
fathers? Yes, but majority of households, we know the stats are there that as a woman, you have to, fetch your child. And if you're working 9 to 5, support could look like allowing someone to go home, get their child, either continue working from home, or if there is childcare, come back and work. And there's different ways in which companies can allow women to thrive. Because what usually happens is, like you're saying, you can't bring your best self forward because you're busy worried now, or your child gets sick in the middle of the day, and you're thinking, I don't have the support to just take leave, or to take my child to, the hospital or anything like that. So I think there's a lot of policies that companies can put in place to ensure that we're making sure that women feel supported and have the right mechanisms in place to be able to accelerate in the career, and not the opposite, where when you become a mother, fall off and like decide I can't work because if I work, it means that I have to give up A, B, C, and D. And maybe just to be a little bit controversial, I don't want to be too controversial. I think part of when you're developing policies from a company perspective, right, you want it to be, you think about equality, right? We're talking about equality. You want it to be inclusive of everybody. But the reality is where we are now, we almost kind of have to be more favorable to women. And then you'll find people like, but that's unfair. So maybe just your thoughts on that, and that thinking that if we always women, those women policies, women empowerment, like what about the men? And are we being unfair to them by focusing so much on creating environments that allow women to thrive?
I think it shouldn't be a question of we are doing more for one than the other. For me, it's always been I would like to be treated fairly, right? The same opportunities, the same scolding, if that's what it comes to, you know, the same level of engagement that anybody in a corporate or a working environment should experience, male or female, right? And I think from stemming from that perspective, it's really a case of us as women then also sort of looking at it from the perspective of not necessarily always seeing it as I'm not getting the opportunity, or I'm being treated unfairly, or for that matter, our counterparts are, sort of also looking at, well, I don't understand why women need to get special concession because she's a mom or because she's got to do household or home chores. The reality is that the age of the working world right now, the age that we are in, has both men and women who are very much involved in raising families as well as putting food on the table, right? And I think for us as businesses, it is important to recognize that we've got both of these genders that in a way sometimes tend to clash because, women are still on the rise, right?
Yes.
The number of women coming into an industry, into the tech industry is growing every year, absolutely. But is it where it needs to be for then the various sort of outlook in terms of how policies are structured? What does the support sort of structures look like within an organization, inside or out? I think that really is something that we need to be looking at a little bit more aggressively. But again, I really say women in general, I think it's important for us to be asking for the fairness factor. The fairness factor. Treat me as. Now, I get it. There's some things that women may not necessarily be able to do or want to sort of opt in for. Absolutely. But I certainly feel at that stage, we shouldn't necessarily be judged by that or ruled out completely. It might have been that just I had a bad day that day and I really didn't want to go out for beers with the guys. Something like that. But I'm not sure if I answered your question, but that is really where I come from the perspective of the fairness needs to be there.
Absolutely. I think for me, because I get this question a lot, right, around girl code. And guys will comment and say, what about the boy child? What about us guys? We also want to learn how to code. And for me, my sort of response to that is, look, I look at it from a equity versus equality, right? Equality, everybody starting at the same line, but what you don't see are all the hurdles that are stand in front of a woman before she even gets to start running. Right? Where potentially a man, yes, there's a few hurdles, but there's a lot more than women, right? And so the equity part is saying that what do we need to do to first remove those hurdles so that we can have equality? And that's what we're all chasing for 2030 as the UN Sustainable Development Goals. But right now, we are nowhere near there. there's still a lot for young girls and women, for them to, like you're saying, they're slowly coming into these industries.
Yeah.
But because of how society has been structured for so many years, they haven't had the same opportunities. And so we have to, almost like put them forward and put them first, front and center. And that's what we stand for. We're not saying that men don't deserve opportunities. We're just saying right now we are investing in women, and we're trying to accelerate that progress so that we can get to the equality where we no longer have to worry about whether you're a man or a woman. That's what we're chasing,
Yes.
to get to that point. Yeah.
And it absolutely comes back to what you spoke about earlier, which is sponsorships, right? I mean, if we as women now in influential positions, in positions where we can make an impact, I don't see why we shouldn't. It really does come down to the fact that whose name are we putting out there? Who are the people or the children that's coming behind us that we are actually pushing forward as, you can do this. This is potentially what you open up your world to, just by virtue of sponsoring in any little way that we can.
Yeah, 100%. And I'm a product of sponsorship in that sense, that people have put my name forward. In places where I was like, are you sure? Maybe I'm not ready for that. But sometimes you need that little push, right?
Yeah.
Which kind of brings me to my next thought, which is really around like, I don't know, what do you think needs to be done for women to start feeling like they're being invested in? Like, what can we do? And there's a lot of different kind of ways to look at it. Like, do we need more men allies? Is it policy? Is it a combination? Like, what is it that we can do to allow women to feel like they are being invested in, and these other opportunities? And we've talked financial, we've talked coaching, sponsorship. But yeah, do you feel like there's more that can be done in that sense?
I think, we've talked about the inclusion as something that is still very important, building policies and structures in mind for everyone. And if we're talking about women specifically in this case, yes, it is that level of flexibility that we're speaking to. I think the other things also sort of really come down to being able to offer certain kind of programs that will help to promote women. Now, we would have women that would be new to a business. So it's the first time job that they would have, whether through the perspective of as a graduate, or whether it's people within a business, women within a business that are actually then wanting to be promoted or moving up the chain, trying something different. I mean, I had a conversation with one of our ladies a few weeks ago, and one of the and she probably didn't mean to sort of say it like this, but the thinking and the question was like, I sit in an HR space, but I would love to be able to do a migration and transition into doing something more technical. Now, I've never actually had any exposure to someone who's going to be able to help me make that transition, because it's quite a leap, right?
Yes,
you're going from HR
HR
into something that's now more technical. How does that happen? Who's going to be there to actually provide for the skills, for the learnings that actually needs to happen? And so being able to have some of these internal programs, I think is a wonderful opportunity for us to be able to add another layer of being able to invest in women. How do we actually make that happen? Because in my mind, she's a fantastic employee. I certainly see massive potential in her, right? But do I want to lose her to another company altogether because we can't make that happen for her? Absolutely not. Yeah. So those are the kind of things that we need to be able to do, almost sort of women in these positions to be the advocates for those women who want to be able to grow into different areas. I mentioned graduates, and I know at BET we've got a fantastic graduate program. And if I look at actually where we were in 2023 and 2024, consistently our numbers with the take-ons of graduate trainees from a women specifically, we've been hitting 50, 55% on average every year.
That's amazing.
And I mean, these are some fantastic numbers, right?
Yeah.
Because this year we had a take-on of 35 graduates, and 16 of those were women. You know, the focus in terms of what companies can actually do to promote women in general, I think is fantastic.
Yeah, and I like your touch on programs, right? Because that's what we focus on at Girl Code, creating programs, but not only to upskill, but to make sure that we can connect them to companies that are looking for those skills. Because often we've seen there's just that gap where someone doesn't know about graduate programs, or they don't know how to apply, or their CV is not structured correctly. So for us, investing in women looks like, giving them the training, but also making sure that we're creating that direct connection for their next opportunity. So it's not just we train you and then sort of let you figure out the rest, because you don't know what you don't know, right? So I think we're very much aligned in that. And there's a lot, I guess, we can get into in terms of how do we invest in women? How do we accelerate their progress? I think we're on the right direction. I believe we are on the right direction. We're seeing the numbers change drastically, and it's amazing to hear that you kind of are hitting the 50 mark, which is really what we want, right? We're not trying to exclude one gender on behalf of the other. So I think that's pretty amazing. I think before we kind of wrap up and close the topic today, because like I said, we could go on forever, let's end off the episode by just talking about and sort of shining a spotlight on a woman in tech. So my question to you is then, who is your Woman Crush Wednesday for today?
So this is going to make total sense when you hear it, right? Okay. Having now heard my journey, it would be Grace Hopper. Now, Grace Hopper is a co-founder, or essentially the co-builder with Howard Aiken, who actually built the first Mark I computer for Harvard. Further to that, she obviously went on to co-found, or essentially put COBOL on the map, which is a huge code language right now that we are still using, right? Yeah. But the thing that really stuck for me, and why Grace she's got such meaning, is in the quality space. You break code, you find bugs.
Yeah.
And essentially on this monolithic Mark I that herself and Howard had actually put together, that is where she coined the phrase, a bug, when she found a moth inside the machine, right?
Yes.
So a little bit of a funny one, but certainly Grace is my one for today.
She's amazing. I admire her so much. And there's the Grace Hopper Conference, which is one of the biggest all-woman in tech conference that happens annually. So amazing, and really admire her. I think for me, I'm going to say Ayumi Aoki. So she founded the Women in Tech Global Movement, and there's a South African chapter. I think, she's well in over 50 countries or something more probably. And she was just a woman also that kind of saw the gap, right? And I resonate so much with that. And instead of just saying, well, there isn't anything I can do about it, started this movement to bring women together and say, what can we collectively do to grow the space? So there's obviously a lot of women out there, and I think just shining that spotlight, and maybe somebody else didn't know about Grace, or Ayumi. So if they didn't, there's a good chance to go on Google and search and find out more about them. Yeah. Thank you so much for joining us on our very first episode. On the next episode, we're talking about Africa and tech, the cyber skills gap. So please do keep the conversation going. Remember to subscribe, follow, and engage with us on all social media platforms.